welcome in to another episode of Chiefs Focus Live. It is going to be me and Caleb today, but let's give you the rundown. We are unfortunately going to have to talk a little bit more Rice today as some news came out, but we'll get into the details of that. Zay Flowers visited Kansas City, and we will finally get to AFC West expansion and talk the rest of the AFC West. Plus, there is something Joe Burrow said that we might agree with. Well, finally. My name is Quentin Morris. We got Thiz running the show in the background, and now a guy who is more responsible than an NFL wide receiver. It's the Professor Caleb.
How are you doing, man?
Oh man, God, when the report came out, I was just so upset. It's like, are you kidding me? Like, really? We're doing this again?
Yep.
It's just annoying, like it's really just annoying. So without further ado, Thiz, if you've got the graphic ready, let's just shoot up what this comes from. The Dallas Morning News. It is a newspaper down in Dallas, and they received the police report, and this is what it had to say. According to police report, the photographer believed the suspect wanted to hire him to take pictures, and when he returned, he was made aware that the suspect was by the members of the suspects encouraged, the report said. Entourage, the report said. The photographer found the suspect, who told him to look at an Instagram message on his phone. According to the report, the reporter does not detail what the messages said. As the photographer looked down at the suspect's phone, the suspect punched him in the left side of the face. So, the photographer went to. Hold on, Thiz. The photographer went to the hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. A police spokesman said the law enforcement officials told the news the man had visible swelling on one side of his face. So once again, that comes from the Dallas Morning News. That's what we know up to this point. It is not looking great for Rashee Rice. I said this on Tuesday that we were more than likely going to have more information by the time that this show happened, and unfortunately we do. So I don't know, Caleb. Why don't you talk about this?
I mean, number one, why are you in a club at 3 in the morning after you just got in trouble? Nothing good happens after 11 p.m. if you're outside. I'm just saying. You gotta be safe. Nothing good happens after 11, 12 at night. The second thing is, Rashee, what was said that made you get this angry? Now, I saw something that apparently it wasn't altered. It was more of an argument. There wasn't really a punch thrown. So this is the first time I'm hearing that. But at the same time is that you're already in trouble. You need to stay under the radar. It sounds like Rashee needs to get out of Texas in general and move to Kansas City and be in a place up here. Because at this point, it is very frustrating to see him continue in trouble. Now, will he get cut? No. But he's going to have to serve his suspension, and this is why we see the Chiefs are bringing in people to figure out if they are going to have someone else in. And unfortunately, what we're going to see is they're probably going to have to deal life without Rashee Rice for a little bit, because you're going to have to pipe it down, because apparently him with his friends and the entourage, things are not working out. So at this point, I have nothing to say. I'm just very baffled.
I think this video that we have, it's about 15 seconds long. We'll really just bring the emotions around to what everybody is thinking. So Thiz, whenever you have the chance, run the little video that I found on the
It's Skull. He knocked over another ATM, this time at knife point. He needs your legal advice.
Stop breaking the law, asshole!
This is
not lying.
this is how this is how we're all feeling. I think everybody, when they saw the report, they're frustrated with it. Like I said, this is still a developing situation, but that is the report that I read off to you. That is part of the report that was obtained by the newspaper down there in Dallas, and that's the information that we have right now. And it's the only information that we have to go off of. I part of me at for when the first incident came out, right? And I think I made
Mhm.
this clear, but let me just follow me here.
Okay.
When we're talking about the street racing stuff, and you're like, he's like 23 years old. 23-year-olds do dumb things, and nobody died. I don't. Nobody was seriously injured, and everybody was able to walk away from it. And the lawsuits came in, and we knew that sort of stuff was going to happen. But there are consequences for your actions. But fortunately, I think when all this settles up, everybody will be able to move on with their lives, and we can just leave it
Mhm.
behind us. And the one thing that it was is like, let's just hope that he takes this opportunity to learn from this,
Yep.
and we can all move forward.
Mhm.
Well, based on this, it doesn't seem like that he has really learned from
Yep.
what he did, because you could say, well, it's two totally different instances. I don't think so, because if he's hanging out with the same people, if he's hanging out with the same crew, which he's in Dallas, and so it probably is, right? You don't just find a new group of friends within the last 5 weeks, right? So if you're hanging out with the same people and you're making that decision, I'm not making excuses for a guy anymore. I even felt like off, making excuses for him the first time, because,
Mhm.
I'm 24 years old. I've never, you know, wanted to go out and, street race somebody down I-35, right?
Mhm.
So at a certain point, you're a grown ass man and you need to make decisions. The whole world is in front of you. One would assume that this has been your dream for since your childhood, or at least
Mhm.
when you realize how good you were at the high school / college level, you made it your life commitment to end up getting drafted in the NFL, and you have that
Mhm.
opportunity, and you're throwing it away. That's
Yep.
what you're doing. You are throwing it away, and it's frustrating to see as a fan, as just a human being watching somebody else, you know, throw away all of this. And I don't know, what the next move is for the Chiefs part. On Tuesday, we talked about Kansas City having to go in and sign a free agent wide receiver to sort of plug the hole when Rashee Rice gets suspended.
Mhm.
I don't know how much this impacts that. I don't know if this ends up being two different suspensions. I'm not sure how that is, because Roger Goodell really, really holds the keys to that decision, and it's really hard to guess what he's going to do.
Mm.
But Kansas City now if we're talking the football side of thing, Kansas City needs to make football kind of decisions. And I agree with you, Caleb. I don't think that this is some sort of like he gets cut or anything.
No.
But Kansas City needs to make a football decision here. And one of the things that they're moving forward with, we know this was reported earlier today, that Zay Flowers, formerly of the Jacksonville Jaguars and Buffalo Bills,
Mhm.
visited Kansas City. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, hey, when you look at this whole Zayfar situation, this is someone you can bring in the offense that can probably is going to help in a lot of different situations. Probably going to help with some dinking and dunking. I mean, he's not going to be Rashee Rice unless he just has a second coming like no other. But I think this is a guy you can bring in and can really help. I mean, the options are limited. Allen Robinson was signed, who I was advocating for. He signed with the Giants, I believe. I think Jay Jones would be a good option because you can put him in multiple different situations and see what he can do. I think they have to sign him because you don't know what's going to happen with Rashee Rice, and you need someone ready to go. Because there's a chance Rashee Rice may play part of the season and get suspended, or there may be a chance that he gets suspended in his play. I mean, you never really know what's going to happen. But I believe you have to bring Zay in just in case to see what happens. Mix him in because you never know. This might be kind of a pickup where you could do maybe a 1-year deal, and then a year or two, a year later, you can maybe bring him back if you want. But ultimately, you have to have this people there because if you do not have this, they're going to struggle. And this team is too good offensively right now to have some setbacks. So bring in someone who knows what they're doing. And hey, if you have him there, and let's say that Rashee Rice doesn't get in trouble this year, which I think things will come at the next year, honestly, the way the court system works, this is only going to make this offense better. And by then, I think at this point, after what he has gone through, I think he knows I'm on strike 2, strike 3, I'm done. So I think some big decisions can be made, but ultimately, I do believe this will be extremely helpful.
Right.
Uh,
I think I said Zay Flowers. I meant to say Zay Jones. But do you have some background on him? The Jags recently cut him. to save almost $4.5 million against their cap. He signed a 3-year contract 2 years ago, so it probably it was really a 2-year deal. With that third year, there was no money guaranteed, and that's why they were able to cut him.
Mm-hmm.
He had an underwhelming 2 seasons in Jacksonville, 116 passes, almost 1,200 yards, 7 touchdowns in the 2 seasons that he was there. He had a career reception high in 2022 where he had 82 receptions and 823 yards. Last year, he missed 8 games because of a knee injury that he suffered early in the season. So, this is not a guy that's going to come to Kansas City and be the number 1 receiver. That is not the kind of talent that Zay Jones is. Zay Jones is a really nice 3-piece on your team. Whoever Kansas City ends up bringing in, the expectations for them have to be pretty low, just because there's a reason why they're available on March 9th, right? There's a reason why Zay Jones got cut from the Jaguars, and that decision was he is simply not worth $4.5 million. That's why they cut him, because the production that they were going to get out of him, they did not feel like it was worth $4.5 million.
Yeah.
That is not a lot of money. And so for Kansas City to bring in a guy like that, yeah, it's a good thing because it provides you an insurance policy. It gives you a little bit more breathing room in case that there is some sort of injury. There are you would think that there are similar verbiage in the offensive system, right? Because he comes from the Andy Reid tree, from
Doug
the head
Peterson
coaching standpoint, right? So you do think that it wouldn't be so the transition to an Andy Reid offense, I don't think would be that difficult. But this is not a guy that's going to come out here and be 1,000-yard receiver, a 750-yard receiver. If you get solid production from him during the Rice suspension, whether he's out for 8, 10, 12 games, whatever, if you're able to get just decent wide receiver numbers from him, make 1 or 2 catches a game, you end up with just a few touchdowns, right? If you're able to get that from him, I think it is potentially a hypothetical, successful signing. Right now, Kansas City hasn't done it yet because Flowers has met with 4 teams in total, including the Cowboys, and he's from Dallas. I think he also met with the Cardinals and the other team I don't remember off the top of my head. But look, this is a signing that Kansas City needs to do because Rice is going to get suspended for his off the field actions. I mean,
do you think it's going to be this year? Or do you think it's going to be next year?
I don't know, because there's a chance that this assault, might get taken care of before the vehicle incident does. And so maybe he gets suspended, for this first, and then the vehicle stuff rolls over, and he gets it, and then he gets a second suspension for that. I don't know, because all of this is just so wishy-washy on their end, and I don't think we've ever seen somebody had 2 different problems, 2 totally separate instances in the same offseason. Usually, when you get into, if you have one incident, then guys lay low, and that's it. I don't remember off the top of my head a player in the NFL where they have a very serious off the field issue, and then 4 or 5 weeks later they have a second serious off the field issue.
Yep.
So I don't know how the NFL is going to take that.
Yeah, and I don't really know. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we at this point is above us. Decisions were made, and people are gonna have to deal with the decisions that were made. So ultimately, we'll see what happens. Because at this point, I'm so lost for words. If they can bring a guy like Zay Jones, like Thiz was saying, this is a move I am waiting on. But unfortunately, and looking back at the highlights, I was like, Rashee Rice is gonna have a great after we did last year. I can't wait to see what he does this year, and we may not see that. So ultimately, decisions will have to be made now. I don't think he'll get cut, but strike two. This looks like it's there. So,
I mean, even when Jones was with the Bills, he didn't have like an impressive
mm-hmm.
offensive production. He
Yeah.
he played he in 36 games with Buffalo. He had 90 passes for 1,037 yards.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just like it's fine. There is value to having guys like that on your team. You need guys that are just able to, move the chains, can get 40 to 50 yards in a game, and are guys that can catch the ball when you throw it to them, be there where you need to do, right? Like there is value to that.
Mm-hmm.
When he was traded to Oakland, and they were Oakland at the time, in 2019, he caught 81 passes, 847 yards, and 2
Mm-hmm.
touchdowns in 43 games. So that's what, just over 2 seasons?
Yep, I
So
think
like
so.
it's not, this is a guy that if you get 400 yards from Flowers in 30 catches and a couple of touchdowns, like that's the kind of production we're looking for here, right? This is not going to be a guy that comes in here and becomes a number one wide receiver. And
Mm-hmm.
if you just look at what Kansas City has on the offensive side of the ball, I feel like we're sliding back into what Kansas City looked like last year.
Unfortunately, we may be at that point, and I thought we would have the chance to go over the top, but we show we can be effective, and I feel like we have upgraded in certain instances. So take the good with the bad, but I will say this: McCreasy Brown's going to help, Xavier Worthy's going to help, Kelsey's going to help, Wiley, that new tight end. I think we may take a step or two above, but we'll see what happens.
Like, I think the ceiling for Kansas City's offense is higher than it was last year, right?
Oh, for
Because
sure.
I do think Kansas City is simply more explosive with Brown and with what Worthy can be and his potential. But with Rice off the field, and we know that Rice is going to miss some games, we just aren't sure how many and
Mm-hmm.
when.
Mm-hmm.
And you bring in a guy like Flowers, I mean, it's just like how I keep saying Flowers, I mean Zay Jones.
Yep, good one.
If you bring in a guy like Zay Jones, like what exactly are you getting that's better than what you had last year? We know Travis Kelce's going to be the same. We know that, and we're pretty sure, and I'm pretty sure that Brown is a better receiver than MVS, right? I'm pretty confident in saying that. They're both deep threats, but I think
Mm-hmm.
that Hollywood Brown can be used for more than just that deep threat. So let's say that we've got a plus there, right? Then after that, it's we don't know what Worthy is going to be, and I don't put a ton of stock in a rookie wide receiver in this Chiefs offense. We're pretty sure Pacheco is going to be the same guy, right? We're pretty
Yep.
sure that he's good, and we can move on with that. Well, Clyde is still there. Clyde is Clyde. When you start looking at the other receivers, there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
similarities there because some of the same players are there, and it's not impressive. Like
Yep.
Kadarius Toney is still there. Nobody on this show or watching this show is really excited to see what Kadarius Toney
Well,
can do.
actually, I am because I
Really?
have a feeling. I have a feeling after what the year he had, he has been quiet. We haven't heard much. I think he has a chance to up his game. So I do think he could be that key addition that can help us when things get rough. I feel like now if he
Okay.
starts dropping passes, but I have a feeling. I'm hoping. I think he'd be able to help us this time around a lot better than what it was before.
Let me ask you this then: who steps up
Of all the receivers we
of all
have,
the of any of the offensive skill positions? Well, I'll move it out to tight ends, other running
Mhm.
backs. Who steps up? Because I'm looking at the roster right now and what we
Mhm.
have, and we're removing Rice from the situation. What guy that is either new to the roster or has been on the roster, who steps up?
I think it's either going to be KT, okay, there's Tony, or I also believe it's going to be, I forgot his name is slipping, not Justin Watson. He's always going to be old, reliable. I forgot the receiver's name. We have a receiver. I'm okay. I think Justin Watson. I think those are guys who can really step up in a pinch. I do think with this dink and dunk, it's going to help us. And if you really look at it, we look at all receivers we have on paper, adding Rashee Rice, we're deep, especially with Marquise Brown and Xavier Ware. We're deep. So I think we'd be able to manage things for a few games.
Like,
no matter.
Last year, I bought in. I'll be honest and upfront. I bought into the Kadarius Toney hype. I saw what he did towards the end of last season, and I was like, okay, full off season. I'm excited about what he can do. I'm going into this off season, and I try not to, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. I'm trying not to shame on me. I'm trying not to fall into any of the extreme hype that comes out of Chiefs minicamp and stuff from the wide receivers. And I'm trying to take an unbiased opinion and an unbiased look at this wide receiver room, and it's not impressing me. Like, if we were to go through, we could go through AFC West, or just AFC in general, and there's a lot of teams that have better weapons, overall weapons, than what Kansas City does. And I know that we have Patrick Mahomes, and it's the great equalizer. But I do not want to go through another season where Kansas City has one of the most mediocre passing games in the league, because we know that the potential is there for so much more.
What if they win the Super Bowl and do back to back to back?
That's the ultimate goal. So if that's how you have to win a Super Bowl, is to just be a mediocre offense, then whatever. But I don't want Kansas City to turn into what Aaron Rodgers had towards the end of his career, where
I don't think we're gonna have that. I don't.
It just never felt like the support was there. And I'm sure Packers fans felt like that too, where they were like, no, the Packers will always be able to support him with quality weapons.
They didn't do anything.
But this is a second year in a row where Kansas City is in an off season and they haven't done anything to sort of bring in a guy. And yeah, you were depending on Rice, and Rice just screwed you here. But I'm looking at this roster, and I'm just sort of thinking out loud here that I'm really worried about what is available for Kansas City to throw the ball to. And let's be honest, Pacheco's had that shoulder injury. I think that this is the last year of dominant production from Pacheco. That's why I was really hoping that they would go out and sign, or to draft a running back, late in the draft, because I don't know how much more production you can get out of Pacheco. And I'm worried that there's a real chance, because of his running style that we all love, he's going to put himself in harm's way. And if Pacheco goes down, man, this offense is really screwed.
Well, that guy from TCU, undrafted free agent, is pretty good. So I feel like the Chiefs did make a couple moves at running back with the undrafted area. So I think there's a chance we'll be fine. But yeah, he getting hurt would not be great.
I mean, I hate to be Debbie Downer on March 9th, because, we like to, for a lot of this is just an opportunity to talk about it, but convince me not. Whether you, Caleb, you, Thiz, somebody in the comments, convince me that my logic is wrong. What am I missing?
I think we're so much better than last year offensively. What we added. I just feel like we're in a better spot and a better place. Now, if guys go out there start dropping the ball, that's a different story. But on paper, we are better than last year's receiving core. Easily.
I just think that we seem to be – it's like we're treading water here. Like, I just look at what Kansas City has to offer, and it just is not – it's not much different than what we had last year. The Chargers are our paper champions too. Yeah. I mean, if we could just look around the conference, and there are just teams with much better weapons than Kansas City. I mean, yeah. I mean, we're finally going to get to our AFC West expansion conversation, where we talk about every other team in the AFC West. And I mean, I think you can argue that Kansas City is towards the bottom of the AFC West. Let's go ahead and have this conversation then. We'll do a little AFC West expansion. We can just start with talking about generic draft stuff, but if you want to roll it back and talk about their weapons compared to Kansas City's, we can do that too. Let's start with the Denver Broncos, who during the offseason have gotten rid of Russell Wilson, no more Let's Ride in Broncos country. They went and they drafted Bo Nix.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you have a strong opinion on him or not, Caleb, but what do you think about what the Broncos have done up to this point in the offseason, including or excluding the Bo Nix draft pick?
Well, I think unfortunately this had to happen for the Broncos for the 80th time. I mean, we've seen that. I mean, they finally beat the Chiefs last year, so we gotta give them a little round of applause there. But ultimately, the Chiefs won the Super Bowl. But the point is this: the Broncos, I think, they made some moves, but it's still kind of honestly mid at this point. Yeah, they made some moves, but this is kind of like seeing what we can do and save cap space for next year. They look like they got the quarterback. They traded for Zach Wilson to be the backup.
They did do that.
They did do that, so people beware. For those who know what I'm talking about, and then also when you look at just kind of all the different moves, they got rid of a lot of their good guys. So unfortunately, this is gonna be a rough go around. But this is what Sean Payton wants to do. He wants to take it all to the bottom and build everything back up, kind of like Deion's doing in Colorado. For those who want to be haters, but he wants to take everything to the bottom and build it back up. And this is what you have to do with cap space and all different things. So yeah, they made some moves. I don't see them beating the Chiefs, you should be honest, because they do not have their star weapons. The receivers are gone. They lost their best defensive players. So, Broncos, it's not really nothing to be laughing unless they somehow just start on fire, which I don't see happening.
We may have to get into an argument about the Colorado football team, but maybe that's a conversation for a few weeks from now. But the Bo Nix pick, I'm fine with. I do think that when you talk about a guy that have a very accurate passer, that this is like the kind of guy Sean Payton wants, right? Because he's always looking for the accurate passer, a guy to sort of run his system.
He had weapons at Oregon that made him accurate. So can they surround him with weapons in the NFL? I think that's a good point.
Yeah, I will say that I do like Troy Franklin, the draft pick, for a couple reasons. One, when you have a successful quarterback at college, I always think that it's a good idea to bring in one of his receivers into the NFL with them, right? We talk so much about chemistry, how chemistry is so important, and you're going to go through and draft his number one wide receiver and bring him right to him again. I mean, I think that that's just a smart move. I know that Troy Franklin had the drop issue in college at times, but I just think that that's a really smart move, especially because he slid so far back in the draft. So obviously, those are the two most important things that they did. Changing the quarterback position, and I think bringing in Troy Franklin was a huge part of it. I don't think there's not a whole lot of other moves that they did that really blows me out of the water. None of the other draft picks that they did, and they didn't have a ton of them. None of the other draft picks they did really worry me. But I think the Broncos are in a multi-year rebuild, because they still, for years, they've just been, it's almost like they've been just trying to get the quarterback right. And some of the other pieces have just sort of been neglected and have atrophied away off the roster because they've just been trying to get the quarterback right. And, whether or not Bo Nix is the right pick or not, we won't know, until a couple years from now. But they needed to move on from Russell Wilson, and we'll see what Sean Payton does with Bo Nix.
Yeah. And I think, they got the quarterback, so here are some years to figure out what are they going to do. So ultimately, it's going to be very interesting. AFC West, the Broncos moved down. It's a couple teams look like they're moving up in the rankings there.
All right, let's go to the Chargers, the Los Angeles Chargers, the team that nobody's a fan of. I've never met a Chargers fan ever. So,
I've met three.
You've met
my
three?
best friend, and he lives in a small town 2 hours east of us, northeast of us. Quentin, you never thought you would find him. Apparently they are.
All right, so obviously their big move this offseason was the change at head coach. They brought in one of the more interesting characters in the sports world, a Harbaugh. I always get it. What is it? Is it John Harbaugh? I always get him confused.
It's Jim.
John.
One of the two.
One of the two. You think I'd have it figured out by now because I've talked about it so
It's
damn
Jim.
much.
It's
Jim?
Jim. Yeah.
Okay, so they brought in Jim Harbaugh. That the old team. There's always something going on with the Chargers. One of the interesting things that they did back in February is Navarro Bowman, the 49ers linebacker, the like really good. He's their linebacker coach now.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's something.
Yeah. I definitely like their draft for what they want to do. I think that the Chargers are going to be a team that just wants to run the hell out of the football.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's going to really benefit their quarterback play, their passing game. They went and they drafted Joe Alt, who is one of the best, if not the best, tackle prospect to come out in multiple drafts.
Yep.
So I think that they're showing their cards here a little bit that they just want to run the hell out of the football.
I agree. And like Harbaugh said, offensive linemen are weapons. So because of that, they're going to run the heck out of the football. They're going to do a lot of different things. Now, I don't think they're going to have like successful year, but they're going to try to beat teams in the trenches. And that's one thing I'm kind of concerned with the Chiefs' defensive line. Can we stop them on consecutive 2nd and 3, 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, 3rd and inches? Like, you got to get out the field. So, we got to make moves. Moves need to be made. But yeah, I think that they may, I don't know if they're going to be that successful this year, but they're going to be doing some things that are probably going to scare a couple teams.
I think that the Chargers are going to be a real pain in the ass.
Oh, always.
I mean, they also drafted Ladd McConkey, who was one of the guys that was projected to go to Kansas City, and Brendan Rice, who is the son of Hall of Famer Jerry Rice. So they tried to rebuild that wide receiver room. They are trying to rebuild that offensive line. I mean, I think overall the offseason for them has been pretty good, all things considered. And while I'm in no way, shape, or form saying that they are going to make a run at the AFC West, I am very interested to see what that offense looks like and how that really the whole team, because the defense has been a huge problem for that team over the past 4 or 5 years, despite the fact they had a defensive-minded head coach. I just think that this year isn't going to be a problem. The Chargers aren't going to be a huge problem this year. I think 2-3 years from now is when the Chargers are going to be a very successful team. Now they're just going to be annoying. They're going to be that fly that's hanging around you, while you're trying to eat your burger at a cookout, or like the smoke that no matter where you go, it just seems to find your face from the fire pit. That's going to be the Chargers this year. They're just going to be annoying. They're going to hang around a lot longer than you thought they would, and it'll be week 10, and they'll be a game or two out of first place, and the conversations will be, man, the Chargers could win the West. The Chargers are vying for a playoff spot. Like, those will be the conversations, and you'll be like, oh my God, here we go again. But eventually, I think they're going to fall flat because I don't think the team is overly talented. That's my overall quick summary of the Chargers offseason and how I feel like it's going to move forward. So I'm not worried about them, but I do think that they have improved significantly in important positions.
And I agree. I think what we're going to see is that they're going to be doing stuff that people are going to not be happy with, and they may even sneak into the playoffs a time or two. But like you said, 2-3 years down the line, they're going to be a problem. They're going to be a problem.
I do, because my thing is that I do think that Harbaugh is a really good coach. I just think that people get tired of him after a while, and it seems like everywhere he goes, it's been like that. So it's just a matter of time before he ends up getting they get tired of him. Yeah, before he causes just too many problems. All right, the final team in the AFC West, a team that I can't believe they finished second place in the AFC West last year, the Las Vegas Raiders, who have done the perfect job of continuing to be irrelevant. Gardner Minshew, I guess, is their starting quarterback heading into the year. They drafted the best tight end in the draft,
Bowers,
which I'm sure that I'm sure that a lot of people are gonna draft number 1 overall in their fantasy drafts. They do have, all jokes aside, they do have a very good tight end duo
They do.
with him and Myers.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, I'm not really impressed with anything that the Raiders have done. Christian Wilkins that's going to be a hell of a defensive line. I'll say that. I know that their head coach talked about what did he call them? The Mahomes rules,
Yep.
right? And
Let's
it
see him.
seems like all of the other two teams in the AFC West have come to the conclusion, quarterback, and we're going to try and go out and score points. Where the Raiders have taken a different path, where it looks like they just want to build up a hell of a defense, and they'll worry about offense later.
Yeah. They're going to want to capitalize off of turnovers and things. I agree. And ultimately, we're going to see. Go ahead.
I don't think it's a successful plan. I think that you beating the Chiefs on Christmas was more of a
fluke.
It was more. It said more about where Kansas City was than it says anything about where the Raiders are. But hey, man, if that's what you think it'll work, go for it, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And unfortunately, what we've seen is that the Raiders got lucky there. But yeah, they made some moves, but I mean, they're preparing more again for 2 and 3 years down the line, and that's again where I'm seeing these teams can catch up with Kansas City 2 to 3 years down the line. Now, I think the Raiders can finish second, and they may be able to sneak into the playoffs, maybe, but a lot's going to have to go their way. But I'll give them this: Antonio Pierce has won that locker room, and I think he can help them do what they're supposed to do. But against the Chiefs, when they play against the Chiefs, those games I think will be a little bit more closer to an extent. Moving forward, I think the Chiefs will pull away, but these games will be a little bit closer.
Yeah, I think it is interesting that they kept, their head coach. I said that they would, and I think that it's probably the right decision to at least give him a shot, because for the first time in, I couldn't even tell you, in a long time, I think that the Raiders have a head coach that I think is sustainable. At least for the next couple of years. I don't think that he's a guy that's going to make a lot of dumb decisions. Whereas before that, I think that every head coach that they've had over the last few years, you've seen them make decisions that just baffle you, right? Even going back to John Gruden on his second stint there, like him and Mike Mayock's drafting decisions and player personnel decisions were just ridiculous, So I think that Pierce has done a job at sort of keeping the locker room together, like you said. I think that he's done a very good job surrounding him with people that know the game better than him. I think that one of the things that head coaches can sort of fall into the mantra of, this is my team and I'm going to do everything, where it is very much, it's a team sport and it's a team coaching staff. And so you don't know everything. I don't care who you are. So he's done a good job of surrounding him with people that know the football, and he's been willing to show he's able to go to them to ask for advice. So I think there's a real good chance that, unfortunately, he could be a successful head coach as long as he's able to keep the pieces around him. But on the other hand, Gardner Minshew is your starting quarterback. So I'm not worried about what the Raiders have to do until they get some decent quarterback play for an extended period of time. I think the Raiders are going to struggle to be the second best team in the division, because if Bo Nix is anything valuable, then the Raiders are going to be last in this division, because the Chargers are just a more talented football team than they are, with a head coach with a much better track record.
I agree. And then ultimately what we're going to see too is that I think Broncos in charge and be fine for third last, and I think the Raiders just due to what we've seen, I just don't see the momentum halting unless they just completely fall off the face of the earth. I don't see them doing bad at all. Now they're not going to be 12-4 or whatever. They're going to probably win maybe 10 games, if that, I'm being generous. But second place is probably what they'll get. They may sneak into the playoffs, but second place is what they'll get in the AFC West.
Here's the thing about the way the Raiders have built their team. It is, if you just look historically, it is so much easier, especially in the modern NFL, to maintain high top end level offense, because a lot of that is driven by the quarterback. It is not as easy to maintain high level defensive production year in and year out. And
Mm-hmm.
that's because defensive production is just based off of so many different factors. You need top end play by your defensive backs, which means
Mm-hmm.
corners and safeties. You need top level production from your pass rush. I mean, these are expensive positions. These are expensive players. And, after a couple years of that, maybe even you get 1 year of it, right? And then
Yep.
guys end up being free agents and they leave.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to replace those players. So, or the production of those players. And it's just really difficult to maintain high level defensive production year in and year out. And so if that's the plan is, look, we are going to rebuild the defensive backs. We're going to put a ton of resources into the to the defensive line by getting
Mm-hmm.
one of the best defensive linemen on the free agency market. We're going to draft pass rush. We've got Max Crosby. We're going to get to Patrick Mahomes. Okay, but
Mm-hmm.
like that's not a
That's great and all, but
that is not a sustainable way to build your team over
exactly.
the long term, because what I think Max Crosby has 2 more years left on his rookie deal.
Mm-hmm.
Wilkinson you signed to a 3 or 4 year contract, and if your defensive back hasn't improved at all, your pass rush effectiveness is going to be limited.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you build on the offensive side of the ball, you know, and you're able to get the quarterback that can run an effective offensive scheme,
Mm-hmm.
then you can sustain that level. Now, maybe your counter argument would be, "Hey, Quentin, what did you want them to do at the quarterback position? There were no quarterbacks left when they drafted."
Well,
And I
that's
would
fair.
say to you, that's a fair point. Uh, maybe you should have been in the Kirk Cousins
Mm-hmm.
sweepstakes, or maybe you shouldn't have put your resources into Jimmy Garoppolo last year. But if that's your point, is that this was sort of the best option that they had, I could see that. But until they're able to build a sustainable offense around a quarterback, basically until they get a quarterback in a proven offensive scheme, I'm not
Mm-hmm.
worried about what the Raiders could do. Yeah, the Raiders will beat the Chiefs on a one-off because it's really, really hard to continue to beat teams year in and year out,
Mm-hmm.
especially because of the whole any given Sunday. And, we know that bad teams beat great teams every week.
Yep.
But I'm just not worried about that because Kansas City is just so much more talented and will continue to be so much more talented until you are proven to be able to score points.
Yeah, that's a good point. And they have to, and that's last year was a struggle for them.
All right. I think that's all the teams in the AFC West. Let's move on to something that Joe Burrow said that I think that we can actually agree with. And I know that that's difficult for us Chiefs fans to say, but Thiz, if you have the video, go ahead and run it. This was about the NFL talking about expanding to 18 games and what Joe Burrow has to say about potentially adding a bye week and what he wants to do with it. And I think it's a very interesting plan that we see other sports leagues already do. I think
Mm-hmm.
he specifically talks about the NBA and how they
Mm-hmm.
do their All-Star week, but baseball also does this. So I think this is a very interesting plan, or I guess idea pitch almost, to the NFL. If they're going to have an 18th week, what Kansas City or what the NFL should do with an extra bye week. So Thiz, if you want to run that video, if you don't have it.
18 games is definitely a big ask. That's not easy. I feel like adding that bye week was pretty critical for our bodies. Some teams have the bye week 5, week 6, and then you're going 12, 13 games in a row. That's not easy. Probably a Thursday night game thrown in there too. Maybe you could do something like the first bye is kind of how we have it now, and the second bye everybody has it at once, and you make it like the Pro Bowl week or something like an All-Star break for the NBA. I don't know. We'll see how it plays out.
So you heard it there. I think in like 1993, the NFL had a second bye week for a year.
Oh.
It was in the 90s. They added a second bye week. It was an experiment. They did it just for 1 year, and then the TV companies hated it, and so they took it out. But I do think that adding an extra bye week, if you're going to add an 18th game, is a necessity. So, what do you
Okay.
think about taking basically like the Pro Bowl, right, and putting it at week 16, right? So you'd have a 20 week, or what, it would be 18 games, so it'd be a 19-week season,
Okay.
right? What if you put at week 15 you had the Pro Bowl week and everybody was on a bye week?
I wouldn't mind that. And that's another thing too, is like you could do that, and I think that could work. But also, will the Pro Bowl, will they be like telling players you can't play in this because you get hurt and when the team's in the fight for a playoff hunt? Now I would like it because if they do that, number one, rest. Number two, we get a different part of the league. I mean, they can bring, like you said, the Pro Bowls, games and things, and bring it to the midpoint where we know who's making the playoffs, kind of we know who's not making the playoffs. I think you split it down the middle and do whatever by week 10, week 11. I think you just do the middle of the point season there. So it doesn't really affect anyone's like playoff push. Week 10, week 11. People may have back-to-back bye weeks. Okay, that happens. Or may have a game, bye, then another bye. But I think week 10, 11 is a perfect way to do that. Probably, honestly, and I don't know how you would feel on this, probably, how would you feel maybe at the beginning of December?
That
Because
actually,
it's not gonna be on Thanksgiving because we love they're
right.
not, that's not, but let's say after the Thanksgiving holiday, then that's the bye. That is the bye.
That's exactly the day that I was thinking of,
Mhm.
because you're right. It's after Thanksgiving, right? The NFL is taking over Christmas, right?
Mhm.
Despite the NBA. So let them do the first week of December, which would be like, it would be early. What would that be, like week 13, 14,
I
something like
think
that?
so. Yeah.
So week
Mhm.
13 or 14, when when baseball does the All-Star break, they talk about it as the middle of the season. It is not the middle of the season. There are 2 months left of the season. So you're more
Yeah.
like 66% of the way
It's
through
a
the
good
season.
spot.
So you're like 2/3 of the way through the season. You can do your Pro Bowl week. You don't have a Pro Bowl game, but you have some of those skill competitions to where like guys aren't going to hurt themselves. And
Mhm.
obviously, some guys, maybe you'll have less guys opt out,
Yeah.
because like you'll actually, whoever ends up going to the Super Bowl, can actually participate in the Pro Bowl again.
Good point.
You're able to have that second bye week where a lot of guys can take time off. In, like I said, in baseball, you have the All-Star week where it's an entire, it's what, Wednesday through the next Monday
Mhm.
is nobody plays any games except for the All-Star game,
Mhm.
and then
That's a
it's back
party.
to, yeah, and then it's back to baseball. So in
Mhm.
football, you could have whatever your normal bye week would be, right? Everybody gets a bye week before week, what did I 15
Yeah.
or whatever. So you can have your week 4, 6, 8, 12, whatever. And then during that first week of December, it's Pro Bowl week, and you get to talk about, all the different guys that are going. You get to do the skills competitions,
Mhm.
right? So I think that really is a good way to do it. You don't necessarily have to move the season up or move the season back to accommodate
Mhm.
the extra game, because you're basically just moving the Pro Bowl up. That's all you're doing. You're just moving the Pro Bowl up
Yeah,
earlier in
this
the
would
year.
this would be about week 13, is, and they would probably shut it off after. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
you don't have to really change the NFL scheduling that much, and you're getting an extra game. So you're giving the TV companies, you're giving them an extra actual football game. So
Mhm.
the money, they'll still be making more money that way. I think that it is a good idea to have that. I think it is a fair
Mhm.
accommodation to the players and the league to have that second. Plus, what you could do is, up to that point, the NFL is continuing to try and move games overseas. Well,
Mhm.
with a second bye week in the actual football season, you're allowing for more of those international games to take place
Yeah.
because you have the second bye week.
Mhm. Or then they could do something where that, yeah, and they could also do maybe the Pro Bowl in another country. You never know, for a little bit to expand the game. So I don't
Yeah.
know. I mean, there's a lot of different options.
I do think it is an interesting idea. I I do think that it's a I don't know if the NFL would do it just because you are sort of conceding a week in the middle of the NFL season away from football.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, you would increase the ratings of the Pro Bowl anyways.
It would.
Because it's in the middle of the NFL season. People are still, people are still in football mode. Whereas when I think now, because the Pro Bowl is the week before the Super Bowl, it's not Pro Bowl week. It's week before the Super Bowl week. That's what it is. It's the 2 weeks of nothing but Super Bowl
Mm-hmm.
coverage. People could care less about the Pro Bowl. If you
Yep.
move the Pro Bowl up, maybe you'll get more people to care about it.
That's a good point. And it's also, they spread it out from there. It's going to fall into the area where we're going to get that 3-day football weekend and no one has to go to work on Monday. I think it's Martin Luther King Day. So, hey,
President's Day.
President's Day. So, I'm not going to complain. So, it all will work out one way or another. If we can have that, I'd be happy.
I think that's all we have for the show.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything that you would like to add?
No, I just would tell the fans when it comes to this, don't be surprised if this happens sooner rather than later. And don't
That's
be
a good
surprised
point.
if there's some kickback from the commissioner and all of them about the second bye week when it comes to money. Because Roger Goodell has shown money is what rules this league. So, unfortunately, we may see a point where there could be some tension.
Yeah, the next NFL contract negotiation, NFLPA like contract, a union bargaining agreement. That's what it's called. Isn't up until 2030, but the NFLPA and the owners can come to an agreement before that. If I'm the NFL players, I'm making that very expensive for the owners to get what they want to play an 18th game. I'm going to get, I don't know what the players, other than a second bye week, I don't know what would be at the top of the mind of what the NFLPA wants in concession wise from the NFL, but whatever it is, the NFL owners are going to have to pay a hefty price, whether it's monetarily or something else that the players have really wanted for a long time but haven't been able to get.
I don't know what else could be besides the second bye week.
Yeah, I know that personally. I do think that they need to do some stuff like add players to the roster. I think you need to add a couple of players.
Expand it to fit 60. How would you feel to expand to 60?
I think you need
to. That's too much.
My only thing is that if you expand it, it sounds like the Chiefs locker room doesn't have a lot of space to begin with. So if you continue to expand it, the Chiefs may need a new locker room.
Yeah, need one for a while. Yeah.
I do think that expanding the roster is the way to go. I think they need to get rid of that. If you're on the roster, you should be able to play. Like having this
inactive list
is the stupidest thing to me. So you need to get rid of that. I do think that there are some other changes that need to happen. To me, it's not just giving a second bye week. I think there are other small changes around the edges that the NFL needs to consider in order to do this.
I agree. So.
Okay. Thanks everybody for listening. We will be back. Actually, I won't be back on Tuesday. I don't know who's going to be here, but it won't be me. So I will be on vacation.
Enjoy it, man.
I will. So somebody will be here at 8:00 Central Time to talk sports with you, to talk Chiefs football with you. Don't know who it'll be, but make sure you subscribe so you can get that. And then I definitely will be back next Thursday because the NFL schedule comes out on the 15th. That is next Wednesday. So we will be able to talk anything and everything Chiefs schedule-wise, and whether or not they get screwed over by rest time like they did this year, or, we'll figure out who Kansas City is facing week 1, which has been a ton of speculation all over the NFL world. So with that, we will talk to you guys later.